A couple of really good Brock Purdy predictions to get to. When you think about quarterback discussions, contracts, trades, drafts, evaluations, all of that stuff, there's one thing that I saw today that you should always keep in mind. Like 100% of the time, I'm going to try and think about this. This guy named Adam Harstad wrote this on the internet. Some people, this is about, Kirk Cousins got benched for Michael Penix, and Kirk Cousins got signed this offseason to a lot of money, and they won't be able to trade him. They'll have to cut him, and then they drafted Michael Penix. People said, what are you doing? Why are you drafting Penix? A couple people out there said, actually, this is pretty smart. But here's the thing you should think about. Every time you think about a quarterback decision, this guy, Adam, says, some might think that drafting Penix made no sense after signing Kirk, or that signing Kirk made no sense if they were going to draft Penix. Both moves are smart. Every quarterback is simultaneously the guy and not the guy until observation collapses to one reality. I love that line. Smart teams avoid thinking we already have our guy against we need to get our guy. Smart teams think probabilistically. It's never a word I've ever in my life said out loud. Probabilities, probabilistically. There's a 40% chance we have our guy, but by taking another swing, we can increase our chance to 70% that we have our guy. And you got to have your guy to compete. So even marginal gains and chances of getting a guy are worth a great deal. Even if it increases the odds that people will make fun of you in December. So I think this is a great way to think about definitely Kirk and Penix, and it's definitely a good way to think about Brock Purdy. You think Brian Baldinger, who has praised Brock for a long time now. It was critical of him, which is fine. You can criticize and praise. It doesn't mean you're on one side. He's on. I think like he's on pro Brock side, but only to a point. Like he's not on pro Brock side. Pay him top 5 money, which is fine. I think most people are there, especially since on Wednesday afternoon, all signs are pointing to 262 and Hey Guy hats going on sale Wednesday, December 18th. If you're hearing this later, then get to heyguy.co. They may be gone already. So with that in mind, two things. One, if there's one thing this 49ers organization consistently has done really well, it's navigate weird quarterback situations. So sometimes they get very lucky, but what they haven't done with Kaepernick, with Garoppolo, or with Trey Lance is back themselves into a corner that they can't get out of. Now you might argue it's like Purdy became lucky, but here's what I would say about, well, if it wasn't for Purdy, how would they have pivoted from Lance? Fair. We don't know exactly. But we did see a hint of it, which was Sam Darnold. Like if Purdy never existed for the 49ers, then Sam Darnold just might have been the guy that led the 49ers to the playoffs last year. Maybe. Brock had an MVP consideration level season last year. He did that. But let's get into part two, because Tim Kawakami wrote a big piece in the San Francisco Standard today, which has now apparently gone subscription, although I read this article for free, but not, they're slowly rolling it out there. But I thought Tim said some really good stuff today. At his best, and this goes back to the tweet I read to start this conversation. At his best, Purdy is a top 10 quarterback with 4 career playoff victories and a Super Bowl start already on his ledger. At his worst, well, he's currently 15th in passer rating, 10th in QBR. That's a pretty solid baseline. He's younger than every quarterback currently ahead of him in either category except Jaden Daniels, who's 10th in passer rating, 5th in QBR. I think we spent so much time last year talking about where's Brock's ceiling. We spent a lot of time talking about ceiling, because why do we talk about ceiling? Because we watch Josh Allen and we watch Patrick Mahomes and we watch Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, and we talk about salary ceiling all the time. But if I told you right now Brock is not going to be at the top of the quarterback financial market, then we stop talking as much about ceiling and we start talking about like baseline. right? The Niners have been to a Super Bowl with a quarterback. It didn't have a big ceiling, but had a solid, at the time, baseline in Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think it seems to be conventional wisdom, and I subscribe to it, that Purdy's baseline is higher than Garoppolo's baseline. Kawakami goes on. He's their best option at quarterback for now and should only get better as the contract ages. I think that's true, but, you'd have to see it, but I think that's true. If he's good, the Shanahan-Lynch era will continue, and they'll be contenders almost every year if the 49ers negotiators also make sure they're protected in some way in case Purdy isn't so good in 2025 and 2026. This is where they do thrive with quarterbacks. And the reason you can do this with, because you say like, with Ayuk, they're not doing it. With Debo, it's getting hairy. I think the reason you can do it can be easier or harder with quarterbacks. I think the reason it can be easier is if you're negotiating with quarterbacks who haven't made it abundantly clear that they are at the very top of the market, right? That like if you made Josh Allen available in a trade, there's almost nothing that if you're willing to trade 3 ones to go get Trey Lance, what would you trade for Josh Allen, right? There's almost nothing people wouldn't pay. So if you don't have a quarterback at the very top of the market and you're not paying him the very top of the market money, which if you pay it to the wrong guy can severely impact your franchise, i.e. the Browns, then what you're offering when you're offering not top of the market quarterback money is still generationally massive money. And you might argue, well, I mean, not top of the market receiver money is generationally massive. It is. It's a ton of money to offer top 10 receiver money instead of top 3 receiver money. But quarterback money is on another level, right? Top like 10 quarterback money is on another level. It's massive money. We're talking incredibly huge salaries. So you can, like, let's just say 10th in guaranteed money, Jordan Love 160, right? $160 million. So you don't need 230 like Dak. You'd want 230. But if someone's like, hey, how about 160? You'd go, okay, I can do 160. And I think that's probably about that's going to happen with Brock. And it will not be top 5 money or top 3 money. And it will also be humongous money. And I think players, this is what happens in the NBA a little bit to the NBA's detriment, is your mid-level players are making so much money that with so much guaranteed that they can kind of dictate terms in a way that mid-level, it's happening in college athletics right now. It's not going to last forever, but it's happening right now where non-starters, like the 7th guy off the bench in basketball, wants $100,000 or $150,000 or $200,000. These are not made up. I'm giving you real numbers right now, numbers that I've heard from talking to coaches. In football, non-starters or just solid contributors are asking for and getting a ton of money because like there's one quarterback out there right now who was a starter last year and is probably going to take more money than his school can offer him to be a starter to go be what's expected to be probably a backup to a star young player this next season at a major, a top flight college football program. So it's happening everywhere, but quarterbacks have this rare flexibility in football of not having to be the top paid guy to be the guy that can, change generations. So I think that's one thing that plays in your favor if you have a guy like Brock Purdy. And then Tim Kawakami says, if you made me guess on the Purdy outcome, and he goes through, you should go read the article. I'm quoting only small parts of this article. Tim goes through much more thoroughly. He said, if you made me guess on the Purdy outcome, I'd say a slightly lower average annual value than Jordan Love. Okay. Jordan Love's AAV, average annual value, is $55 million a year, which is tied for second in the NFL. Maybe a slightly higher guarantee. Love's is 160. And the same term, 4 years. Then both sides do this again in the spring of 2027. I talked about this a little bit the other day, yesterday, Monday? Monday. That we do talk about these deals all the time and how much is he worth per year, because really what we want to talk about is what percentage of the cap is this player taking up. And I think all these things feed into, no matter what this deal is, even if Brock got the number one quarterback deal in the league, which he's not going to get, but even if he did, it would not negatively impact 2025. And as we've gone through it, I talked about this extensively with Josh Dubow on Tuesday. If you're listening to the podcast, you're going to hear that coming up. If you're watching the YouTube, that video came out yesterday. I encourage you to go watch it. The schedule breaks in their favor in a significant way. Now, we don't know where all their primetime games are going to be. Rest days, that's significant. But, I love people, there are people who, like, when I talk about the schedule, pound their chest and go, no, I want to play the best. You got to play the best. You got to beat the best to be the best. It's like, yeah, save that shit for the playoffs. You got to you're going to have to beat the Chiefs. Don't you worry. You're going to have to beat the Lions. Don't you worry. Just win the division, try to get a 1 seed maybe, which at this point for next year is a bold goal. Just make the playoffs. You got plenty of chances to go be the best, to beat the best, to be the best, whatever. Forget that. Give me the Bucks. Let me get through the season healthy. So anyway, and they host the Super Bowl next year. So all of these things line up to putting 2025 under the category of go win it all type of year, not take a year off, rebuild year. Their year off is going to start January 6th when they don't make the playoffs. Although as of today, I saw the it's actually not that crazy of a scenario, but it's only a 1% chance of making the playoffs. And the good news, I got this in my email today. Odds on which team Kirk Cousins starts for week 1 of the 2025 season. 4-1 Titans. The Seahawks at 9-2. Okay. The Browns, the Saints. Here's the thing you got to understand. They can't really trade him. He's too expensive. They're going to have to cut him. And it's going to be really expensive for them, but Michael Penix is cheap. And so what could end up happening this year or next year is what has happened with the Steelers and Russell Wilson, where Russell Wilson's making a bunch of money from the Broncos, and so the Steelers get him really cheap. That seems to be what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins next year. So that's why you can look at how are the Browns going to afford Kirk Cousins? Well, he's going to be dirt cheap. He's going to be cheaper than Jameis, and that's how they'll get around paying Deshaun Watson. Anyway, so Titans best odds: Seahawks, Browns, Saints, Giants, Raiders. Panthers, Jets, Colts. Where's Aaron going to be? Rodgers. Jags, Patriots, Bucks, Cowboys, 25-1, Dolphins, 25-1, 49ers, 33-1. So that's good. If you are of the Niner fans, they're like, and this is everybody that is like, no, thank you, Kirk Cousins. No, thank you. 1, 2, 3. They are 30, whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 15th in odds on that. So, yeah, don't worry about that. Comment from DR. By this time next year, we'll be talking about John Mateer, who I did not have in my off-season bingo. Actually, I did. I didn't think Jake Dickert was going to go to Wake Forest. I had him in my mind. I thought he was going another place, a Big Ten school, but he didn't. Jake Dickert, Washington State football coach. Andre said he's not worth $60 a year, but Kyle Lynch don't have time to develop another quarterback. They will pay him. Develop? Since when are we developing quarterbacks around here? The next quarterback developed. I mean, he is the only guy developed. I would even go back, Andre, to what Kawakami wrote about. Forget about developing. You don't even know who to start develop. Like the options out there, you could just look at it that way. What are your options, really? Brock seems to be around Tua money. Brock has shown some strong game, not so much lately, but I predict Tua level. Tua is 167 and guarantees. Jordan Love's won 16 guarantees. Kawakami went through and mentioned Jalen Hurts, who was 179 in guarantees, an average annual salary of $51 million, and currently at his signing was 23% of the team's cap. With Jordan Love was 21.5% of the team's cap. Tua got $53 million. That's probably a hair high, but in terms of the guarantee, you might be right on the money with that comment. So. Chris says we need an Aaron Rodgers enigma take. I'm halfway through. I have not watched it. I'm not sure that for people who that's enigma is it Netflix? I've not watched it. Not planning to watch it. So I need your take. Tell me if I should watch it. But I can tell you what you should not watch. Do not, under any circumstances. I don't care if you've gone through 17 other Christmas movies and you're like, what else should we watch? Watch the movie Carry On with Jason Bateman and Taron Egerton, wherever you say his name. I like both those actors. That movie sucks. Not good. It's 2 hours long, and at no point during that film do you forget that it's 2 hours long. They are constantly stretching to get it to 2 hours long. So what I would recommend, if somebody in your world is like, we got to watch this movie, here's what I suggest. You say, okay, you turn it on. Within 15 minutes, it'll be clear there's only two options: to turn it off or to watch the film by fast forwarding 30 minutes at a time. You watch 30 minutes. You fast forward for 30, then you watch like 2 minutes, you catch up. Then you fast forward for 30. You watch like 2 minutes, you'll be able to figure out what's happening. You fast forward for 30, same. You fast forward for 30, it ends. That movie is terrible. And I love Bateman and the other guy, Taron, whatever. He's had some excellent roles. The movie stinks. EK Beasy says, Brock's inability to play in poor weather has to be a major concern moving forward. Playoff games are played in January and February. That's true. I talk about this with Josh Dubow as well. He hasn't been great at it. I'm still pretty open-minded on him that, as time goes on, not that he'll get better at it, but if he gets more shots at it, there will be better performances than there were. I think one thing that everybody kind of felt this year, and this goes back to the thing that, Baldinger was critical. And I think Baldy's quote, I read it, was something like, he had chances to win the game against the Rams and didn't do it. And this goes back to what I've talked about all year long. And even into last year, there are so many great efficiency numbers with Brock. There's so much that is promising with Brock, right? There is a lot there. What I wanted to come out of this year feeling, and we didn't really get, and there were a lot of opportunities for it, were just some more moments, where you go, oh, that not everything is kind of falling apart and it's not going to go great, but that is what you need. Like that against all odds comeback. Not every time. Mahomes does it every time. That's not reasonable, but just a couple of times. But, again, I think there are so many moving parts and disastrous parts of this season that there's still a lot of reason to feel good about Purdy. As I think what we're seeing is it's all going to come down to the money is going to affect how we view this whole thing. Comment from James. Thank you for not saying leverage. Never want to hear that word again. I'm intentionally not saying it, but it doesn't mean that it's not in the back of my mind. Dylan enjoyed the movie. All right. Max says if the Niners aren't running the ball effectively in bad weather, they're not winning anything. Yeah. You could say that for a lot of teams. Monsters Ball said, didn't the Patriots play a snow game where they attempted like 2 passes? Yeah, remember Mac Jones wore a scuba suit? And wasn't it Brady or Garoppolo? Somebody told him. Mac Jones wore an actual scuba suit under his uniform. Comment, tough to have moments when Debo and Ronnie dropped the ball. Yeah, it's absolutely a fact. I mean, he had a chance at a moment. Debo dropped it. He had a chance to set up a moment, and he threw an interception. Steve-O says, minus Kittle and Purdy, the whole team was bad. Yep. All right. One last thing I want to leave you with. This is something you're going to be at Christmas parties or Hanukkah parties. People at your house, you're going to have dinners. You're going to be looking for things. I went to a fundraiser on Monday night, and you're going to be looking for things, topics, And I came across something. I like to think I grew up somewhat of a, believe it, many of you don't know this, a baseball historian. Love baseball, read a lot of old Mickey Mantle's book and all that, all those Ken Burns documentaries, watch all those things. And was having a conversation on one of my group threads about if you could pick any person from history's name you would rename yourself that name now as a singer, what would it be? Because I said I thought Tris Speaker would be like, you could be a good indie artist, singer, or whatever. And I got to admit, I did not know about this person. But somebody on the thread said, what about Johnny Dickshot, who played for the Pittsburgh Pirates, debuted for the Pittsburgh Pirates, played in the big leagues from 1936 to 39, and then presumably maybe was served in World War II. I don't know. And then he came back and but he finished his career in 45. I don't know. Maybe he was just in the minor leagues. But he was born in Illinois. And if his name was just Johnny Dickshot, that would be one thing. But his nickname was Ugly. This guy, Ugly Johnny Dickshot. He was often referred to as the ugliest man in baseball during his career. According to one story told about him, a fan of Little Rock asked to shake his hand and approached the stands with him, telling him, I want my wife to see you so she'll appreciate me. He once said, don't mind my looks, I've got a good personality. So I don't know what you do with that. You can go to Wiki. You can tell your friends about it. Bring it up at your next dinner. There you go. Ugly Johnny Dickshot. I'd never heard of him. But apparently his name was, oh, wow. All right, you can just go to his, people lived lives, When he was young, his skull was fractured by other children throwing bottles in the backyard. He lost consciousness for 3 days, and they put a metal plate in his head. He worked as a newspaper delivery boy in grammar school. He also worked in the steel mill with his father. He was all-state as a halfback in football. Graduated high school in 1928. Well, there you go. I don't even think he's that ugly. I think he's good. He's got a good jawline. I don't know. This photo it looks good in this photo. Looks like your average old-timey athlete. Names, they just don't make names like they used to. And nicknames especially. Adam asks, anyone following the race between the number 1 pick between the Giants and the Raiders? You know what, Adam? That's a great idea. I'm going to be following this race. A comment from Daniel, going back to the thing we said early, the quote early said, I'm just catching up, but I have to say that Adam is one of the best football writers on the planet. And he's dubbed Harstad's Razor, which is all statistics are selection bias. It goes back. I was not aware. I followed Adam today, and I got to figure out where to read him because I enjoy his social. All right. That's that for this. If you're listening to the podcast, which if you're listening to it, you are listening, then a conversation with Josh Dubow is coming up. If you're watching it, go find that video elsewhere and check out Prize Picks code GUY. Make a $5 lineup, immediately get $50 into your account.